Steve, it's 103, and we've got 23, a 24th person coming in here. Uh,
All right.
Let me remind everyone that, as per the usual, we are recording for posterity's sake, and it will be on YouTube later. I will edit out any personal details about health that come up, and Paul, I do have a couple to mention today. But other than that, Steve, I'm going to mute everyone, and you unmute yourself when you're ready.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our first Zoom meeting of September 2020. We'll get into a few announcements in a few minutes. Paul Starnes is our chaplain today. And for updates on my family, Paul, we'll turn it over to you.
Let us pray. Lord, when will we ever learn? When will we learn that hate begets hate and violence begets violence? When will we learn that all persons are born to be loved and carefully cultivated in your love and purposes? When will we learn that the world belongs not to any one group or nation, but is entrusted to us to be cultivated, preserved, and enjoyed in fellowship with you? When will we truly claim and practice those values you have given us through those you have chosen to share them? When will we learn that respectful dialogue leads to better things than coercion and force? When will we learn the power of responsible compromise for the common good? Lord, as Rotarians, it is our stated purpose to address these very concerns. We have freely chosen to join together to make such a world a reality. Empower us to do so. And we pray that our digital gathering today shall in some way contribute to that purpose. Thank you for Mark and all those who are giving evidence of our purpose in feeding the hungry and the homeless. For Larry and all those who are planning to join them in a day of caring. And for those who are securing speakers to inform us of community needs and ministering. And Father, we pray for our fellow Rotarians who today are having difficulties. And we pray, Father, for their healing and their well-being. And Lord, thank you for Rotary that addresses the needs of our world. Amen.
Thank you, Paul. We didn't get to hear the Kingston Trio's song, but I think the theme of your prayer told us what the song was. Next, John Keith is our Sergeant at Arms this month. John, it's all yours.
Thank you, President Steve. If everyone will join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Of the things we think, say, and do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
In the way of announcements, Larry, do you have an announcement about Day of Caring this week?
Yes, we completed the project yesterday, except for one window. We worked, well, like some of us worked Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday this past week. I'd like to express appreciation to Dean McMahon, Bill Owen, Ed LaFontaine, Rick Smith, and Ron Leatherwood, and Larry Clark for their contributions to get that work done. I'm glad that we were able to get it done as expeditiously as we were, and the lady was very well pleased with the job that we performed for her. So we built a landing and a long set of steps and replaced the door, and the window that we still need to get the glass cut for will be replaced by Rick Smith in the next couple of days. So that's it.
Very good. I was going to volunteer to help this week.
Well, I ended up had a family issue and needed to get it done before the 10th. So I started soliciting help, and I think we tried to call you, but we didn't get you. So we apologize for that. And I apologize to anybody else who may have wanted to help, and we just didn't get it worked out this time.
This past Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, we were in the process of moving Stephen into a 3-story house. So
right.
I wasn't fit to be doing much other work.
I'll tell you, after Wednesday and Thursday, we weren't much fit to do anything either. It was so hot.
Yeah. Very good. It sounds like it was a good project. And the little image we saw that Cecil had looked like it was a nice long staircase there.
Yes.
We've been approached by the other 2 Rotary clubs, initially by the Haywood Club, to do a project to help replenish the Haywood School Board's food pantry, which is held at Bethel Elementary School. With everything that's been going on since March, they have just about depleted everything they have had in their pantry there. The Haywood Club will be working with Ingalls and Canton, and the Sunrise Club will be working with Ingalls and Ingalls and Waynesville. And they asked us to approach Hazelwood to work with them to hand out a list of supplies that are needed to people going into the stores. Tom Posey said he can get a school bus at any of our locations, and we can load all the food that we can raise into the school bus, and then they'll take the bus down to Bethel and unload it. Marcy O'Neill suggested that we also approach Publix and Walmart. And with us being the largest club in the county, we hopefully can find enough people to staff all 3, if all 3 will be willing to participate. We'll put out a notice to our board members today, and everyone that's replied has seemed very positive about it. So I'll approach, I know Paul at Hazelwood Ingalls very well, and Rick Smith. Is Rick Smith on here today?
No.
He's our inside contact at Publix now. And the current Publix manager is a former Rotarian in the Asheville area somewhere. So I think we'll have good support from those 2 locations, and I will try to find somebody to contact at Walmart, see if we can also work down there. Anybody have any thoughts or comments about this? It's no financial commitment, but it is an opportunity for engagement hours. And if we have a school bus at the locations, that'll bring a lot of attention to it, and it'll be a good joint venture for us with the other 2 Rotary clubs. So you'll hear more about that in the next week or so, because we only have 2 weeks from tomorrow until it occurs on the 19th of September. Any other announcements?
I have 2, Steve.
Cecil, I have a question.
Ed?
Ed.
Yes, a question for you, Steve. The collection point or distribution point is going to be in Bethel. What happens with it at that point? How does it get dispersed out to the schools and the students and the families that need it?
It's dispersed through the social workers in the school system. These are the folks who help us come up with our list for our Christmas baskets. And they are doing individual deliveries now to these students out in the county as they find out what their needs are. They visit them frequently to take homework assignments and so forth to those students who do not have internet connections and so forth. So that's part of how they assess the needs.
Is this to supplement or replace the backpack program?
No, this has always been in place in addition to the backpack program to provide food in circumstances that are even more dire than those who receive the backpack contributions.
Thank you.
Thanks for your questions. That helps clarify some of the things I knew but didn't include.
And Steve, can I, if I can just sort of ask one question just on the, being here at Shining Rock with regards to the backpack program, since Ed brought it up there, have we heard anything on that as far as what the status of that is at this particular point?
I have to ask Bill Owen what he knows. You have to unmute yourself, Bill.
Unmute, Bill.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. We're still waiting to hear exactly what the school system is going to do, when they're actually going to have students back into the classroom. And then usually in most years, we don't hear for a week, sometimes 2 weeks, exactly how many children are going to need food. And so there's always a delay. When the school starts in middle August, it's usually after September 1st that we actually begin the deliveries with manna. And this year, there may be a delay as the social workers at the schools collect information on how many kids are going to need this food. So we don't know yet exactly when we're going to start delivering. It most likely may be early October, could be the very end of September. We're just waiting to hear from the manna folks in Asheville who gather that information and then relay that to us. So right now we're in a waiting mode.
Any chance we can get Josh's kids started a little bit early, or have you identified, Josh, the children who need these backpacks?
Yeah, we've got a handful of them that probably could use those, and those, because we're on a different schedule entirely than what the county is.
Exactly.
Because we've actually, we're just about on a 40-40-20 split. About 20% of my kids are virtual, but then I've got 40% of them here on 2 different days of the week. So I do have some kids that would be of, and if that sounded complicated, it is. But the kids and everyone's making it work. And Larry from the parent side of things down there can tell you how that's going. But we do have some kids that probably would benefit, and we would have to just sort of work out some schedules there with that. But Bill, if you want to, I'll send you I'll get in the side chat here so we don't hog up all the conversation, and I'll send you my contact information, and we can discuss a little bit more later on.
Okay, that'll be good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Any other announcements?
I still have my 2, Steve.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's all right. As you can see, the masks are here. I received them earlier this week and need a volunteer to distribute them. Rich Downs, who idea this was originally, was going to distribute, but as I mentioned earlier, he's unable to do that. I am not really in a good position to distribute them. So if someone would be willing to take that on, I've got a list of who got which mask and how many and stuff. If someone would be willing to coordinate that, it would be much appreciated. And you can just email me or get in touch with me outside the meeting here.
Cecil, I'll do it,
Okay. Thank you, Ron. I'll get up with you.
and they can either drop by here or we'll get it to them.
All right. Thank you. I'll get in touch with you on it.
10-4.
The other announcement I would make is regarding engagement, and we're getting some activities, obviously, going on. And Sandy, you correct me here. I'm hoping I'm going to reference the book of Matthew and saying it's time people learn to fish and quit waiting on the fish to be cooked. And to that end, I will provide individual or small group training on how to enter your own engagement hours, which may also include learning how to access your account information. And I'm more than happy to do that. We do not have the paper logs this year. And again, it's time folks stepped up on that. So let me just encourage you to document. And if you need help, I'm here to help you learn how to do that. Steve, that's, I believe we had an individual who was looking to transfer from Nevada, but he did not check in today. So hopefully Mike McLean has been in touch with him and I've been in touch. So hopefully he'll join us in the coming week. That's all the announcements I have, Steve. Thank you.
Very good. We had good response on our Happy Dollars last week, so it's time for Happy Dollars this week. Who has a Happy Dollar announcement?
I'm gonna give $10 Happy Dollars for the completion of the Day of Caring project in honor of and celebration of the guys that helped out getting that project completed.
Thank you, Larry. I'll give $10 relating to the announcements I made about my two children earlier this afternoon. No more Happy Dollars?
Steve, I'll give $5 in honor of our speaker, Ms. Emily McCurry today, a proud Pisgah High School graduate.
All righty. Well, in that situation, we'll let John Keith introduce our speaker for the day.
Thank you, President Steve. I'm excited to have Emily Warren McCurry here today because the other folks, Emily, know that I've got two missions this year. As program chairman, to have exciting speakers, but also targeting young, professional, up-and-coming folks so that we can keep an eye on them and hopefully entice you to join us on a permanent basis at Rotary. But we'll talk more about that later. It's also fun because you may not know this, Emily, but I spent the first 8 years of living in Haywood County somewhere close to where you're sitting. I worked for Main Street Realty in that building for 8 years before coming with Beverly Hanks. So I look forward to actually going in there and seeing my old office. It'll be fun. Emily has actually been referred to me through several different folks. And I'm excited to have her join us today because she heads up an organization through the chamber as a volunteer called Young Professionals. And that's our target group. So I'm excited that she's not only a young professional, but she's the chairman of that organization at the chamber on a volunteer basis. But she comes to us today as a native Haywood Countyan in the career of financial advisor. She is an accredited asset management specialist. Now, other than Larry East at the bottom of my screen, knowing what that means, I'm not sure we'd all know other than that you deal in the stock market and those types of asset management. But we'll be excited to hear a little bit more about that, Emily. She started there with Edward Jones in 2013 as branch office administrator right here in Waynesville. 2017, she received a master's of business administration at Western Carolina University. And that's when I guess you obtained your Series 7 and Series 66 licenses in order to do the business you do today. As a volunteer, I was particularly excited to hear how much she likes to be a positive impact to the community. Emily, everyone in this Zoom meeting has made a positive impact on the community, and we welcome like souls to join us in that endeavor. She's currently the Vice President of the Board of Directors of the Haywood County Arts Council. She's Secretary of the Board at Hart Theater. I believe I've already mentioned that she's involved in the Chamber as an ambassador, and more specifically, or as specifically, she's the chairman of the Young Professionals Group. So Emily, welcome to the Waynesville Rotary Club, and I asked her to talk about whatever she wants to talk about, but obviously with the stock market during these interesting times, her involvement in young professionals, and she's also been involved in productions locally at Hart Theater. So we could have at least 3 programs, so it's going to be a tough thing for you to narrow that down, but I appreciate you being here today, Emily, and welcome to Rotary.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. So nice to virtually meet some of you. Lots of familiar faces in here as well. So hello. He's exactly right. I am a local. I'm just about as local as you can get. I went to Bethel Elementary School, Bethel Middle, Pisgah. So I hit all of those right here in Haywood County, and I've spent most of my life here. I was errant in my ways and moved away to Boston, Massachusetts for a while after college to experience the big city, but Haywood County is really home. So I'm thrilled to be back here. And John, please come in. We've done quite a lot of moving walls and changing things inside this building. So you should definitely check it out sometime. But thank you so much for having me come in today. Yes, he basically said you can talk about whatever you would like, but I asked if you'd had any financial speakers lately, and he said that you had not. So I just wanted to kind of provide a brief current market update about, what has happened this year and how we think things are going to look kind of going forward throughout the rest of the year. So I'm going to the ability to do that. Oh, I'm disabled.
No, you're not. You won't be. Now you're not.
Okay. There we go. All right. So I'm just going to kind of go through today quick overview as far as how things are going, and the kind of disclaimer up at the top is to honor confidentiality and everybody's time. This is just going to be very general, and I'm not going to be able to answer specific questions relating to your financial situation personally, or really comment on specific investments or assets in this group setting. But if you do have questions relating to your personal situation or finances, I'd be happy to set some time with you to discuss that one-on-one later. So in case you haven't been alive in 2020, coronavirus is kind of the big star of the year. Hard to compete because there's so many other crazy things that have happened. It seems like every new month there's a new horrible event or chapter this year. So I think at the end of the year, when we count down to scream Happy New Year, instead we should scream Jumanji, and hopefully we can kind of restart the universe back up to where it needs to be. But the health and social and economic effects of COVID-19 continue to be felt even in the market, but that hasn't stopped stocks from going higher. So some news last week, the S&P 500 closed at another record high. It's on track to log its best summer performance since 1938, and we had the best August since 1968, which is kind of interesting to know, considering how every time you turn on the news, it's only bad. So the market is wrapping up the summer in a much different position than it was just a few months ago. And that just kind of reflects this year's evolving and very unusual conditions. So today I'm just going to kind of go hit the highlights of what has happened, where are we now, and where do we think it's going to go from here. So Oh, this mouse is a little touchy today. So to catch you up on what has happened this year, as coronavirus emerged in the US in mid-February, the stock market began to decline. It declined sharply and steadily and bottomed out on March 23rd. Afterwards, it began to recover and has since done a very good job of almost fully recovering. And some indexes, such as the S&P 500, have completely recovered, and on top of that have gained about 8% on the year so far. So what's occurred is called a V-shaped recovery, and that's because it looks like a big old V. So you saw the market go down, and then it pretty much immediately came back up. And that, even though V-shaped recoveries are not uncommon, they usually do not happen this quickly. So that kind of just speaks to the fact that the underlying economy was doing fine until coronavirus came around. And that's what really kind of started the mess that we are in. But it wasn't really due to economics, it was really due to fear of the unknown. We've not really faced a pandemic in modern times. So nobody knew what that was going to look like. And anytime there's uncertainty and fear, you're going to see that react in the stock market. So we are, like we said, rebounding, and the last 3 months have provided a lot more evidence for that. The data that we've seen here at Jones is we're hinting at a sizable bounce in the third quarter, which is great news. But if that proves to be the case at the end of September, the economy is going to have recovered about half of its pandemic-induced losses. That's going to leave GDP, real GDP, at about 5% below its pre-crisis level. So long and short of it is there's still a lot of ground to cover and to make up, but this is a really good positive first step. As far as on the business investment front, industrial production has improved for 3 consecutive months, which is good news, but it is still 8% below its peak. The housing market has been a notable area of strength, as you know, new home and existing home purchases, refinances, things like that are exceeding their pre-pandemic levels. We're actually at the best levels since 2006, which is quite impressive. And it looks like we're rising strongly even from a year ago. The low mortgage rates right now at the banks are probably most likely contributing to this as well. And if any of you are in real estate, I know John is, so then it's been quite busy. We've seen lots of refinancing, lots of people, buying homes. From my understanding, there's not enough inventory to keep people happy because we just have so many people wanting to move here. And a lot of that is probably part of coronavirus as well. They're trying to get out of, they were planning on retiring here anyway, but then they got scared in their bigger cities and states that are kind of consumed with coronavirus, and they've just moved up here sooner than expected. All good things locally, so it's been quite strong there. As far as spending goes, we're starting to see people coming out of their cocoons from quarantine. Consumers have redirected initially their spending away from travel and leisure and other like service-based industries, and they've kind of transferred towards durables and other hard goods. So in July, retail sales were actually up about 1% higher than they were in January. So we're kind of starting to see retails boost and get back to normal. And hopefully that continues as people feel a little more comfortable and start shopping again. But a lot of this resilience and bounce back and recovery has been tied to the fiscal policy. So we've seen unprecedented support from the Fed in the form of like low interest rates, the direct government aid, the checks that everybody were sent. And so far, it seems to have worked as intended. So all of that is really great news. I love to front load wonderful stuff and make you feel good, but today is going to be kind of a good news, bad news game. So that's a lot of great news. Some not as great news is unemployment is still very, very high, and the recovery is kind of uneven. So, back in March, we had a record amount of Americans apply for unemployment. It was about 6.9 million Americans applied for unemployment benefits in March. And even now, initial jobless claims are running about 1 million per week. So that's higher, and fun fact, that's actually higher than any point during the Great Financial Crisis in 2008. So it's quite a big impact, even though the market's not really reflecting that. So initially, what we saw happen was unemployment numbers drastically improved as the country started to go back to work and reopened. But unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of those temporary layoffs and furloughs become permanent as companies are struggling to maintain and get back to work. So that is threatening consumer confidence and can affect the recovery of the market as well. Plainly, the longer coronavirus sticks around, the longer folks are unemployed, the closer we get to a real, true economic lasting recession. So that's not the best news, but today we had the report come out for unemployment, and it's better than expected. So last week we were at about 10% unemployment. We thought that we were going to see at the end of this week, we'd be somewhere around the high 9s, and actually came in at 8.4. So that's great news. The next thing really that we need is for the virus to get better, because that's really what we're hinging on, is we're just playing hurry up and wait and see what's going to happen with this virus. So the good news about the virus is the number of the new daily cases has started to trend lower from 70,000, which is where it peaked in July. It was about 70,000 new daily cases. We're now hovering at about $43,000 per day, 34,000 cases per day. And this is not really a major victory because that's still quite a lot of cases, but it is a signal that the measures that we're taking are working. Wearing masks, distancing, washing hands, doing all the things that we've been preaching for months is really starting to help and pay off. So the silver lining of that, even though there's a lot of cases, is based on the graph. You can see we're kind of going down in areas. And so that's reducing the potential of us needing another national lockdown. So at that point, it's looking a little bit like that's not going to happen. But again, all of that kind of is required for everybody to do what they're supposed to do in their own personal responsibility. So we can't go, oh, things are getting better. Let's just act like everything's 100% better and there's no need to worry. So there's just a little bit of caution. We're still looking at things and seeing how it's going. But we've got, again, good news, bad news. Good news is progress on research of a treatment and vaccination is going really well, and that's kind of going to be a key variable in the pace of how fast we keep rebounding. The good news is that the tests on the initial vaccine have been encouraging, and last week we also came out with a new low-cost coronavirus test that delivers results in minutes instead of waiting days. And that could play a big role in detecting the virus early. So that's great. And at the same time, you know, some biotech companies that are working on vaccines all around the world have reported good progress in those clinical trials as well. The other side of that coin, the bad news, is that the path of the virus is still very uncertain. And even, you know, with these positive developments, the next question is going to be about, you know, effectiveness of the vaccine, logistical challenges of production and distribution. And there's still plenty of unknowns and risks that we don't know about as we kind of start to restart and kids are going back to school and kids are reporting to colleges. You know, locally here at Western Carolina University, they've already got their first pocket of coronavirus and they've only been back for 2 weeks. So the logistics of that, of figuring out, you know, what are we going to do? The kids are here. They get it. Do we send them all home? What's happening? So there's still quite a lot of unknown as far as the coronavirus goes. So 98% of the S&P 500 companies have reported their second quarter results, and the earnings have been much, much stronger than expected. This table here probably looks like gobbledygook, but it basically is saying that profits are holding up better than was the case in past downturns. So there's a lot of reasons for that, a lot of things we've already kind of touched on, but mostly the fact that the recession didn't last that long. We bounced back very quickly. A lot of the major indexes like the S&P 500 that we've talked about and the Dow Jones, they're actually skewed a little bit towards industries and sectors that have benefited from the pandemic. So there have been some industries and companies that have done very, very well during this time. A lot of them are in technology and healthcare. So if anything, pandemic has not made us less reliant in technology, especially like here we are meeting on a Zoom. But last year, none of us even knew what Zoom was, me included, and I'm considered a millennial. So we have that. But manufacturing was also less cyclical than normal, given the nature of this recession and the more immediate hit on services. We've improved credit conditions because of the actions of the central bank, and a lot of companies started aggressively putting in cost control measures to defend the profitability of their company. And the long and short of that is that it's been working, which is great. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide because it gets complex pretty quickly, but just very briefly, it's worth mentioning that the Dow Jones has made its biggest adjustment since 2013. As of September 1st, they've replaced ExxonMobil, Pfizer, and Raytheon Technologies with Salesforce.com, Amgen, and Honeywell International. And that's interesting mostly because Exxon was the most valuable US publicly traded company as recently as 2014. And it's being replaced by Salesforce, which just kind of goes to show you how quickly the world is changing and how profound an effect the internet has on our economy and the ways that we're doing business now. But the important thing to remember is that while additions and deletions of companies from an index can cause some short-term volatility in share prices, mostly because like mutual fund managers are aligning portfolios to the new index when there's a change. But the good news is it's normally temporary and this volatility subsides. Let's talk about the all-star of what has happened, and that's been the Fed. So briefly, we've talked about some of the fiscal policy that has aided to the recovery, but almost immediately the Fed took interest rates to zero. And by comparison, in 2008, when we were facing the recession, it took them 8 months to move the interest rates to zero. So it was really quick action on their part that has really helped out. And that's allowed small businesses to borrow money at very low rates. So that's great for business. Maybe not necessarily great if you got a bunch of cash sitting in the bank. But Fed Chair Jerome Powell has basically promised that your interest rates on your checking, savings, money markets, and CDs at the bank, they're going to stay very close to zero for the next 2 years. And that's mostly to help this recovery. Additionally, they announced last week that they're going to allow inflation to run slightly higher than the traditional 2%, which is what this graph is all about. And they've changed their previous policy to continue to provide support when unemployment is high, meaning like the Fed's going to continue to push all the buttons that they can and turn all the knobbies that they can to try to float the economy for as long as possible until we can get people back to work. And that's really, really important and great because for a while there, they were saying, well, I don't think we're going to continue trying to monkey with things. But it's great that they are going to try to keep us going for as long as possible. So how can we kind of look at what we have and what to look at going forward? So that's kind of what has happened, where we are, what's going to happen next. If I had a crystal ball, we'd all make a lot of money right now because I'm not stingy and I would share. But we're likely to enter a more volatile period than the one we experienced over the summer. The quick action on the Fed did help us dramatically so far. But since, like we said, they've done just about all that they can do, the second leg of the recovery is going to be really dependent on how self-sustaining the economy can be. So the path forward is going to be bumpier and the pace of recovery is probably going to be slower. So that is coronavirus, and that should be enough for 2020. But because 2020 is in fact the worst, we're going to throw in a presidential election. And that's going to add fuel to the volatility fire. So if we look at what usually happens in an election cycle in a vacuum, you'll see how we follow a similar pattern each time. So basically the market starts to get bumpy leading up to the election because emotions are high and you absolutely cannot escape the political drama. It follows you everywhere. So then we have the election, it happens in November, and regardless who wins, half the country wakes up happy, the other half will claim it's the end of the world, but something really beautiful happens a few months later. Everybody wakes up and they remember that they live in America, which is a capitalist society, and companies are gonna continue to try to make a profit no matter what. So, you know, companies are still gonna try to sell you things. We're gonna keep buying things we don't need from Amazon. We're gonna keep going to Walmart, even though we hate to go to Walmart. So the best advice that I can give you is to try your very best just to ignore all of the noise. You're gonna hear conspiracy theories. They aren't true. You're gonna hear that this time it's different. It's not. So feel free to turn off the news. This slide here, it just kind of shows you that regardless of political party, the stock market posted great returns consistently no matter what happens in November. So everything is going to be okay in the long run. And really you'd think we'd learn from this cycle, but we don't. We just keep repeating it every 4 years. So that's kind of what happens election years in a vacuum. But when we add that onto the things we've already talked about today for coronavirus, that's basically going to just say, we don't know, we know there's going to be a lot of fluctuations and volatility. So what can we do to prepare? Number one is talk to your financial advisor about your strategy and see if you should consider rebalancing your portfolio. So we're back to stock market highs and it's the time to reevaluate, make some changes before the market declines again. Additionally, some sectors like technology have done truly incredibly well during the pandemic. So it's time to check back on your diversification and make sure you aren't overweight in stocks after all that growth or too overconcentrated in one company or one industry. Lastly, I'd say readjust your expectations as well of what's realistic and sustainable. Since the market bottomed in March, the S&P is up 52%. And over the last 3 years, it's provided an annual average gain of almost 15%. And that is incredible, but it's not sustainable. So we expect equity returns to be positive, but more moderate going forward. So if you continue to expect 30% plus returns like we saw last year, you're going to be setting yourself up to get your feelings hurt. So I know I'm really biased, so take that as you will, but in my opinion, the best thing you can do right now is to talk to your financial advisor. And if you don't have one, I know there's probably at least 2 in this group right now that I've seen. And of course, my door is always open. My personal philosophy is that I want you to know what you own, or at least why you own it. I want you to feel confident in yourself and your financial decisions and really secure in your long-term strategy, because let me be clear, hope is not a strategy. And there's no need to really feel like you're going at it alone or that all of this is overwhelming or inaccessible. So if everything that I just said in my word vomit at you was Greek, just know that that's why that there are big nerds like me out there to help break it into manageable pieces and partner with you to keep you on track for your goals. So, who has questions?
If you would quit sharing your screen,
Absolutely.
then we'll get everybody back. Questions?
I've got one, but we don't have time for all the questions I'm sure we have. But I don't think the Fed can go much below zero, can it?
No, it hasn't. It's not only been doing cutting the rates and the interest rates, it's also been pouring money into treasuries and bonds and some equities to try to float as well. So that's not their only trick, although it is their biggest lever.
You know what the federal debt has gotten up to?
It is ridiculously high, actually. I saw a staggering report on that yesterday. I can't remember the exact figure, but it was basically like we're getting ready to pass, the deficit's about to pass like all of profit and our economy's ability that we have seen over the past year. It's about to pass that.
Most of us in this meeting have excess income. What I'm really concerned about is the people who are well over the big majority of the people in this county who do not have excess income.
Mm-hmm.
What is a real thing? I think we as people who are in the stock market and or whatever, professional or in the retirement, and what Rotary stands for is serving our community. And I think we really need to think about the future here in our county, how we're going to come out of this particular time. I drive the back ways a lot of time between here and Nashville, and I see a lot of businesses closed, places I used to like to stop to get a donut that are going over. So I really think that, as you are, I know, and most of the investors or the stock people in our club are concerned about that as well. So I think we really need to think about that and do a lot of praying, but also I think people like you who have such knowledge and work so much in the community and chamber, and also probably do a little acting, maybe too, Emily, with the heart. But I do think that we have a responsibility to think about those people as well.
Absolutely. Some stats on that in the U.S. is we have about 24% of Americans who have 3 to 6 months emergency savings on hand, but 76% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. And that's why the unemployment rates are so important, because those are the people that really can't afford to sustain.
Emily, I have a question. I'll try to do this in a way not to bring politics into it, although it's not likely possible. What would you expect would be the impact on the economy and on the market if he who shall not be named actually manages to kill Social Security?
Yeah, so that's a hard one. Thanks for throwing me all the softballs, Cecil.
I know you can handle it.
I super appreciate you. There's a lot that we don't know about that, because that's a very big if. A lot of that is kind of the big doomsday predictions and the conspiracy theories that are out there. I've decided what I'm going to do is I'm going to print out I'm going to get a binder, and I'm going to put a big skull and crossbones on it. And it's going to sit on my desk, and it's going to be my doomsday book. And every time I hear somebody say something that's just, insane or like a big problem, I'm going to print it off and put it in there so we can look back years later and be like, remember when we were worried about that? But you're right, it is a challenge. So there's no real way to impact and say, I would not venture into guessing what would happen should certain people be elected. Just know that it is going to be volatile regardless of who wins. Right now, Unfortunately, we are in the most decisive times that we've ever been. Like, we're very divided, and there's so many people on both sides that are so extreme as far as if this happens, then and the world's going to end, and if the other half's like, if this happens, then the world's going to end. And it's really not. We've been here before. We have been truly divided before, and if you look back at the history of the stock market, it generally doesn't care about our thoughts and feelings. It cares about profits. It cares about what are we buying, how much are we spending. Social Security is definitely a concern and a big problem, especially to those that are on a fixed income. But I can't really speculate what would happen. Maybe I'm Pollyanna. Maybe I believe that things are going to work out the way that they're supposed to. But I really feel like if we're at the point where we don't have Social Security, there's going to be a lot bigger issues around as well. I can't see a United States as we have been without those guarantees and promises to our elders. I can't imagine. We sit for a lot, but I feel like that's something that we would all riot in the streets for.
Thank you. Leroy? You need to unmute yourself, Leroy.
There we go. We speak about the economy, and that's like, okay, we just need a solution for the economy. I don't look at it, and I don't think I've ever looked at it that way, or at least the more I find out about it. Number one, you got the stock market economy going like a house of fire. You have the online economy, Amazon and all these others, Walmart, that are getting on it. And then you have what I would consider the real economy. Like Paul was saying, he's driving by these towns, stores are closing down. That's not because we have a great economy. And each one, number one, the online and the, stock market economy that Trump is always trumpeting, they can take care of themselves as far as I'm concerned. It's the real economy that I'd be worried about and that needs to be fixed. And right now I haven't seen, they did the triple Ps, but they haven't really solved the problem with that. What are your thoughts on that? Thank you.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. Local economy is really important. And that's why starting about 10 years ago, there was a movement that you saw through Asheville. Everywhere you went, it was like shop local, love local. You're really in charge of that. If you go and I understand, like, I don't like to go to Walmart either. So a lot of times I'll just buy, something on Amazon, Walmart, wherever it's cheapest and convenient. The problem is that's not great for your mom and pop stores. So that's really up to us to support the local economy of our geography. We have tourists and that's great. We have less of them right now because of coronavirus. So I would say if you want your local economy to survive and thrive, then you need to shop local and you need to spend your dollars here in Haywood County. When was the last time you bought something on Main Street? Go to Main Street, buy something, support Orchard Coffee instead of Starbucks. Go to these other places that are owned by people that live here, that know you and care about you, and spend your dollars to help support those people. Because you're exactly right. The economy is a big word, and a lot of times it doesn't match up with where your geography is. But that also depends on you. If I understand it's convenient, I'm the world's worst to buy something on Amazon so that I don't have to go into a store. But I have also really tried during this pandemic to spend consciously the small businesses here in Haywood County to be sure that we all survive this coronavirus. Because the worst thing, if you look at Main Street in Waynesville, there is not a single box name store, maybe Mass General, but it's still not really that big of a corporate. It's all individual stores and restaurants that are owned by people who we love that live here. So in order for them to survive, take a walk, go order some food and take out from Watami or wherever here on Main Street, not just in Waynesville, but in Canton or wherever you specifically live, and support and keep those businesses alive.
Hey, Cecil.
Yes, Steve. We hear.
Okay. I admire her youth and innocence, but I kindly disagree about the chaos in this country. As a teenager in uniform in the 60s and 70s, I think people have forgotten the chaos that this country was in during the Vietnam War and the anti-war demonstrations. And I can tell you, I personally felt some of the hate and animosity against the soldier that civilians demonstrated during that time period. We were just teenagers doing what our country asked us to, like the policemen are doing now, and everybody hated us. It seemed like everybody hated us. So this country was really, I think a lot of buildings got burnt and offices taken over, huge demonstrations. We got to remember those things of the past, but the big lesson is that this country recovered from it and prospered. And I think the country will recover from this situation and it will prosper again.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with you. So we don't disagree at all. We need to learn from our history and look back and see what has happened so that we can learn, but we aren't really learning from it. We just seem to be repeating it over and over again with different labels on top of it. So I agree. I think we're going to make it through just fine. Remember that these people are your neighbors and love them, and when you're looking at the news and the hate, ask yourself the Rotarian question: does it pass the 4 tests? And I love that. I saw that and I was like, that's how I want to live my life. so that's great. I really admire you and this organization, and just thank you so much for your time and for letting me come and speak to you today. My door is always open if you'd like to chat further.
Emily, we have some good news for you. We have this little plaque that has all that information, and we'll give it to you on the condition you become a Rotarian.
Okay.
I would be happy to sponsor you.
Thank you, Cecil, and thank you, Emily, and Cecil is quite right. We would love to have you consider becoming a Rotarian and helping us do some of the things that we'd like to do in our community and around the world. Any other questions for Emily so we can wrap up our meeting today, Cecil?
Not a question for Emily, but I wanted to take just a moment and introduce Chris Pierce, who has just joined the meeting. Chris is the gentleman I mentioned earlier from, and I hope I'm saying this right, Chris, Fallon, Nevada, a Rotarian from out there, and has moved to the Haywood County. I don't know if it's Waynesville, but to the Haywood County area. Chris, can you hear me okay? I'm not sure he's hearing me right now, but you may be able to see his picture. So everybody wave at Chris and as a way of acknowledging his presence here. And we'll work out the technicalities. Back to you, Steve. Thank you.
I don't think he's connected on the receiving end.
Yeah.
So, Rick Smith, could you please give me a call this afternoon? Anything else for the good of Rotary? We call this adjourned. Thank you for being here, all of you.